Welcome back to Introduction to Five Element Acupuncture. We're going to continue now talking about the levels of chi energy. So we have in nature many different aspects of energy, the chi energy, which we've discussed in terms of the five elements. And we have levels of this energy. And the same is true in people. We have levels of energy, and chi is what we are comprised of. So we have more manifest chi, which is our bodies, the physical level. We have a little less manifest chi in terms of the emotions. We have even less manifest chi in terms of the mind. And the least manifest, the least dense, the least physical, you might say, of the chi is expressed on the level of the spirit. And meridians contain this chi, and this chi is in nature and all through all living things and through the whole universe. So there is levels of energy, the level of body, mind, and spirit in all people, and indeed in all living creation. What do we mean by the spirit level? In Chinese medicine, we talk about Shen. The Shen is considered to be both the mind and the spirit, but there's a lot of emphasis here on the spirit of a person when we describe the Shen. I'm going to read for you a passage in the Wangdi Neijing Su Wen, chapter 26, and this is a translation by Ilse Vaith. Let me discuss Shen, the spirit. What is the spirit? The spirit cannot be heard with the ear. The eye must be brilliant of perception, and the heart must be open and attentive, and then the spirit is suddenly revealed through one's own consciousness. It cannot be expressed through the mouth. Only the heart can express all that can be looked upon. If one pays close attention, one may suddenly know it, but one can just as suddenly lose this knowledge. But Shen, the spirit, becomes clear to man as though the wind has blown away the cloud. Therefore, one speaks of it as the spirit. So it is this aspect of ourselves that's quite ethereal, quite hard to stay in touch with, as the Wangdi Neijing Su Wen describes. It's easy to just as suddenly lose this knowledge. So it's an awareness of something that is always there. Spirit is always present, and it's within every single person. This is not a religious concept at all. Many aspects of religion come from our human spirit. Not just the religious practices, but religious connection. But this is not in its entirety what spirit is about, because you can have two lovers that come together in a loving moment, and that is the spirit touching between them. You can have a beautiful sunset or sunrise and just be so moved within yourself. That's your spirit that you're connecting to. So the spirit is a part of us that makes us vital. It makes us more than just our minds and our bodies. Every animal in the animal kingdom has a spirit. Every piece of grass, every plant, every tree, every bush, every flowering plant, they all have the spirit emanating And the spirit is so, so beautiful when you really get in touch with it, when you really experience it. Spirit, as Professor Worsley, my acupuncture mentor, used to say, the spirit can move mountains. And in terms of the disease that's taking place in our society, and even in spite of all of the modern technology and advancement that we've made in so many areas of medicine, in contemporary modern medicine, still people are getting ill and getting sick in droves. More and more sickness and more illness. And there's a greater degree of mental illness. Now, mental illness does not mean that the illness comes from the mental level, because very often the mental level is strong in a person. Their cognitive abilities, their ability to function in their mind and to think things through may be very, very good. But most of the mental illness that you see in our society is coming from the spirit. People are in a state of desperation, in a state of feeling lost, not connected to this higher power within them and to the greater higher power in our world, in our universe. You can call it God or nature or whatever you like, but it is that connection to the source that when we feel that connection, we are in tune with our spirit connecting to the greater spirit. And when we're connected to our spirit, we feel connected to every other person and every other living thing around us. And if you think about it, there could be no war if we all are in touch with our spirit, if we all are connected to each other spiritually. We would be doing what is for the highest good of all concerned. If each of us did that, there would be peace on earth. So we have strayed from our spirit nature. We've lost touch with this part of us. And part of it is the modern lifestyle that we live in this 21st century. We are living in an age where things are happening at a faster and faster rate all around us. We have the internet, we have cell phones, we have increased bandwidth and speed on our technology. We're going into 5G now. All of these things are just increasing the speed at which we live our lives. And people used to have a slower pace of life. In just one generation, we've seen the pace of life really increase tremendously. It's kind of like a rat race. People, running from here to there, checking their email on their cell phone, not really taking time to be, but doing all the time. The being is what gets us back in touch with our spirit. The doing without the being is just ignoring that part of us, getting into our mind and our body, but leaving behind our spirit. So you can see that in our modern lifestyle, it's often our spirit that's suffering the most. And when the spirit is out of balance, or when we're out of touch with that part of us, that's when often disease appears. We are in the process of working through disease processes that have affected millions and millions of people across the planet, billions of people. And if we return to our roots, to the spirit of who we really are, this is what Professor Worsley means by the spirit can move mountains. The spirit can be the greatest healing force that you can possibly imagine. And harnessing that energy of spirit can heal almost every type of illness. Almost, I say, every type of illness that exists. Because in 5 Element Acupuncture, we diagnose what the level of the imbalance is. So we don't only get the CF, we get the CF, which is which element is the root cause, and we understand what the level of that imbalance is. Through our diagnosis, we have ways of doing this. And then when we treat a patient, we treat them to address that level. We reach that level within the person. So if they're a spirit level and they're a wood CF, we need to go to the spirit of the wood element. And we need to address that through the acupuncture point selection, as well as through our own connection with the spirit that we bring through the needle and into the patient. And as we are the needle in the treatment room, we become that for the patient to heal. And our own connection to the spirit of the wood element will help just by being there, present with the patient, even without the needles. This already sets up the healing process to take place and reaches the level of the patient. So yes, we work with the meridian system, and all the chi in the meridian is treating all 3 levels and balancing all 3 levels within a person. So that healthy, vital chi energy is going to go to the mind and the spirit as well as to the body. Some acupuncture points go more to the body, some go more to the mind, and some go more to the spirit. And we'll see that some acupuncture points go equally to all 3 levels. So we will get into a discussion of the points in the course, in the 5 Element Acupuncture Training Program in a lot of depth. One thing I want to say about when we diagnose the level is that it's never a physical level imbalance that is the root cause of a person's CF. There can be a physical level cause of an injury that someone sustains, and they have a physical mechanical problem. If they, for example, have a car accident and break a bone, or they have a freak accident in their sport, and a sports injury causes a tendon to sprain off the bone. These kind of things are of a physical nature, of course, but the causative factor did not arise from the car accident or the sports injury. Those things happen after you've already had, in most every case, after you've already had the injury or the car accident, before you've had the injury or the car accident, you have had a causative factor. Because remember, the causative factor begins at a very early age, before the age of 7, and in many cases years before that. So the causative factor comes about often as a result of the spirit not being reached and not being nurtured and not being growing and not being fed with joy and love and all the things that the spirit needs to keep it flourishing within a person. We're not paying attention to that part of us very much in our daily lives, in our modern society. And so the vast majority of the time, the level of a person's imbalance is on the spirit level. And the spirit level is so important in 5 Element Acupuncture that we have placed enormous importance on addressing this level and getting the spirit of a person to heal, because we understand that as the spirit heals, we heal from within to without. And when the spirit is healing, then the mind will heal, and then the body will heal. So they're all connected. They're all levels of chi energy that are all interconnected, and we have to work from the level that's the root of the problem. So the other 5% of the time, it's the mind level that is the root cause of a person's energy imbalance. And when it's a mental level problem, you can observe how the person relates to the world getting stuck in their mind. They are really obsessed with things. They are preoccupied with thoughts. They don't have the ability to mentally deal with things and let them go. So all of these aspects of the mind where the mind is where the person's caught up in their head, that can be a block where they're blocked, you might say, and they're stuck in their head. So that type of person could have a mental level causative factor. But if their mind is working just fine, very often it is the spirit level. And what we look for in assessing a patient's spirit, there's a few things. The Shen is said to be observed in a person's eyes. When the spirit shines forth through their eyes, there's a certain radiance, a certain light in their eyes. There's a certain aliveness within the whole person, and they radiate and they have a presence with them when their spirit is strong. If you look in their case history and their personal history, there's an ability for a person who has a strong spirit to be resilient, to handle all kinds of stressful situations and bounce right back and not take it too hard. So we look at the whole person and we assess them as a whole, and we understand the interconnectedness of all the levels within them. And you really can't get someone well as a whole unless you bring up the energy in all three levels: the body, the mind, and the spirit. And we do this by addressing which one is at the root cause. We're going to talk about the wood element, as it corresponds, and the different correspondences, or what's called resonances, of each of the elements in turn. We will do this starting with the wood element. So you see the character there of the wood element, which represents a tree, and you can see the character has the horizontal line for the branches of the tree and the vertical line for the trunk and the roots of the tree, and how the tree spreads out, and the bottom horizontal line there is showing that's the level of the earth, and so reminding us that the wood is also in the roots of the tree, and that part of the tree is under the ground. So I want to start with talking about the season in each of these elements, because the season is such an important aspect of understanding the element as a whole. And in the springtime, which is the season of the wood, you have this tremendous burst of activity taking place. There's a growth, there's an upward movement of the energy, and it's as though everything in nature is beginning to bud, blossom, grow. Tremendous amount of energy in this. And when you're outside in nature in the springtime, you can feel the palpable energy of this season. It's a very dynamic force. Grass grows, trees grow, everything is beginning to bloom and bud, and the birds are singing, Um, just nature is coming back alive after a winter where there's a rest taking place. And there's such a hub of activity. It's as though, not only the bears and squirrels coming out of hibernation, but all of nature is coming back into a greater expression of activity and energy in the springtime. And this is the power of the wood element, this upward force, this power of growth that takes place in the spring. And I liken this to a seed. And in a seed, you have the plan for that plant. You have the blueprint, if you like, for its growth, and it represents what is going to take place for the rest of that plant's life, the hope that it represents, the vision for that plant. And it's all in a seed that hasn't yet germinated, but the idea of it, the power of it, the energy of it is there. And then when the seed does germinate and it starts to grow up, then you begin to see this enormous amount of growth taking place. Well, wood has within it this aspect of the planning. And we get this especially from one of the meridians associated with the wood, the liver meridian. And we'll be talking about the different aspects of these organs and meridians as well. But for now, I just want to focus on the aspect of wood as a tree, because you have very different kinds of vegetation. Of course, not just trees. You have shrubs and grasses and all sorts of the plant world. All of the vegetation in the plant world is really represented in nature as the wood element. But let's just talk about the tree for a minute and some of the qualities of a tree. There are so many different species of trees out there, and every species of tree has different qualities inherent within it. You talk about a mature oak tree that's very sturdy and rigid. If a hurricane force wind comes along, it will not bend too much. It will bend a little bit in the branches, but the trunk of the tree will remain solid and firm, and you won't be able to really sway the tree too much. This also in wood can be represented by a willow tree, which is just kind of the opposite in terms of its ability to bend and yield to the wind, to sway in the breeze. It goes along with things in a much more flexible way. So we have this idea that a young tree, a sapling, can be a lot more flexible. And the wood element relates to also the tendons and ligaments within a person's body. And you can see that in the tendons and ligament structures, there can be some very hard, inflexible tendons and ligaments in an older person, and in a younger person, perhaps a lot more flexibility. So age can be a factor in this sense that I'm describing, but I'm not really speaking in terms of age. I'm talking in terms of the type of wood. There are hardwoods, there are softwoods. Different woods have different strengths, different qualities to them. I want you to focus on the wide range of qualities that you can have with wood element. And one of the correspondences of wood is wind. And you can see this in nature. Again, a wide range of wind, ranging from a gentle breeze to a hurricane. And you can see what kind of damage a hurricane can do. And yet a gentle breeze is so pleasant. So it really does depend on the degree of wood that you're seeing in nature as to whether it's a positive or a negative, destructive force. And what about wood and people? This is so interesting because each of these elements that I've shared with you in the past here in this course is represented in terms of certain qualities that people possess. And there'll also be certain behaviors that people have that you can see representative of an element. And how does that work? Well, you have a certain emotion with each element, and that emotion can affect a person's behavior in that they will tend to respond emotionally and have their emotional stress response, you might say, to different experience the same event differently than someone else does who's not of that same causative factor. So a wood CF will experience emotionally an event differently than a fire CF or an earth CF or a water CF, etc. The same event in a young person's life can be traumatic for one and be completely not a non-event to another. So everybody responds differently, and we have to understand that each person is a unique individual. They have to be observed and diagnosed differently. They have to be treated differently. And Five Element Acupuncture is treating the individual person, not treating the symptoms, not treating the disease, but treating the person who has the disease. So these qualities that I'm describing now for the wood element are just, again, representations. They're described sometimes as resonances within the element, and key qualities that a person might have represented by the wood element, if their wood is their causative factor. But I want you to understand that this is just giving you an idea, and that it expresses itself uniquely in each individual. So in terms of the overall essence of the wood element as it expresses in people, it gives us our inner purpose and our direction. So people who have a great sense of what it is that they're to do in this world, why are they here? What is their life's purpose? Those are very deep questions. And a person with a strong wood energy, a healthy, strong wood energy, has a true connection with this inner purpose. And it's like what drives them, what motivates them, what gives them that inner direction to where they're going is that inner purpose. So when the wood is not strong, there is a lack of sense of purpose, a lack of sense of direction. And I'm not speaking of the ability to go from A to B on a GPS. I'm talking about something much deeper than that, obviously, here. We're talking about how a person, in a sense, has what is their goals in life? What do they want to achieve in their life? And are they in alignment with that process? When the wood is strong, a person has a great inner vision. They feel optimistic about life. You might see people who you say, well, that person is an eternal optimist. They have a very strong wood energy. They're very hopeful. Life every day is a new day. And tomorrow is another day. And so there's this brightness of their future where they look forward to the next day. They look forward to the day in front of them. So there's a sense of their future is something that they embrace, and they have this upward movement towards it, which is the wood energy going up. So they have, in terms of upward movement, you talk about people's growth. And I'm not talking about physical growth so much as how the person grows inside of themselves. You can take classes You can go to read books on self-help and personal growth. And some people are very focused on that. Other people just have it inherently within them. They just really, learn life's lessons. They move on, and they grow as they mature into a greater and greater version of themselves. And then other people, their growth is stunted. They may appear to you to be very immature, almost like someone who is still stuck in their teenage years of their maturity when they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, or even beyond. So when you haven't got the growth taking place within a person, it's a stagnation that can take place. And the stagnation can be very much in the liver meridian, which is one of the two organ systems of the wood element. And then you have a stunting of their growth. You have, even to a spiritual level, a sense of hopelessness that can arise. The persons can become frustrated with wood. There's a certain way that wood can deal with the frustration in a healthy way. When it's in balance and in a healthy way, the wood element provides us with an ability to shift and be flexible and go from plan A to plan B. It's kind of like in nature when there's a piece of grass that's buried then under concrete, or a tree that grows upward and then another tree blocks its light or somehow interferes with its ability to grow straight up. So what does the grass do? What does the tree do? Nature finds a way. The grass can spring up through little cracks in the concrete. The tree that's in the forest and getting blocked by other trees can grow a little to the side and then up. Nature has this wonderful way of being flexible and finding a way to grow. And when people's frustration can be dealt with in a flexible way, then they can still continue focusing on their goals and achieving those goals. But when their frustration leads to an inability to be healthy and deal with their wood, if their wood is out of balance, and that's their wood is their CF, then they have a real problem with being able to find a way to deal with their frustration. And we'll talk about that on the next slide. But another key quality here with the wood is organization. And this comes back to the idea of the seed and the planning. When you have good planning, you have a good structure in your life, you're well organized. We can see that when we talk to them about their life, we can get a sense of even how well organized their thought process is. When they speak to us in the consultation, and they almost like are going in an outline with, topic 1, A, B, C, D, topic 2, A, B, C, D. Very organized way of their mind as well as their life. When a person is, imbalanced in their wood, and they don't have this strength that the wood gives and this power of organization, then they can become very disorganized, and their life is really just totally unstructured. They need that guidance, they need that structure in their life. We can see people who choose life careers based on their wood element. Someone who has a need for guidance and structure may choose to be enrolled in the military, because the military gives them that sense of structure in their life that they don't have within themselves. Another aspect of this flexibility, when the wood is in balance, is the other side of that coin is when it's out of balance, there is a lack of flexibility, which can turn into rigidness in their thoughts, stubbornness, holding opinions that are fixed, being very opinionated and prejudging other people. And this is like the mature oak tree that's so rigid it won't bend and yield. I've seen whole water oaks in my area when there was a hurricane came through, where the whole tree just completely toppled over, roots uprooted from the ground, because the water oak is so strong that when the wind came, it couldn't bend with the wind. It just popped the whole tree out of the ground. And this is that kind of thing where someone's opinions are just so stuck and rigid. So yes, the wood element has this wide range of being in balance to being out of balance. And it can be out of balance in terms of an extreme, extreme excess or extreme deficiency. And we'll talk about both of those. But the other aspect I want to bring out here is the ability for our vision and for our future, our vision physically, and our spiritual vision. This is all connected to the eyes, as the liver meridian and the gallbladder meridian, the two meridians of the wood element, are opening into the eyes. And this is not just our physical eyes that we're talking about here. We're talking about our mind's eye, and we're talking about our spiritual eyes. And when we see things in our imagination, and when we have thoughts we're envisioning, that's our mental eyes. But when we have this inner vision of ourself in our spirit, and we behold who we truly are, and behold that in other people, then that's a great day. And we see the beauty and the majesty all around us. And that is part of the wood element's ability to give us a sense of hope, a sense of vision, where we can see at a very deep level into our future, into our current life, and beyond. Some of the wood correspondences, and like I said, I use the word correspondences, and also in Five Element Acupuncture we can use the word resonances. When I was going through the program in Leamington Spa in England with Professor Worsley, we used the word correspondences, so I'm going to be referring to it that way here in this course. So we know that the main correspondences are the color, the sound, the odor, and the emotion. Those are the four primary correspondences that determine the causative factor. And we've discussed the color green and how the color green is associated with not only the colors on the face, but in springtime you can see, which is the season of the wood, of course, you can see all these different aspects of the color green all around you. And it's there all year round, but in the spring I think you have such a beautiful bursting forth of green color that it really is exciting time of year for the wood element. And people who are a wood CF really can resonate with the spring season, and they may feel quite a bit better in springtime than they feel at any other time of the year. And the shouting and the lack of shouting sound. I think we've covered the shouting sound pretty well. And the lack of shouting sound, as I said, doesn't have to be just a whisper. The lack of shouting sound can just be a lack of assertiveness in a person's voice. You know, like in the shouting sound, we have this clipped, precise, staccato type of sound. A complete absence of that. So it's a meek, timid sound. It doesn't have any power to it. Whereas the shouting sound, even if the person's volume isn't high, there's a tremendous power in that sound. The lack of shouting is a lack of this power. The odor we've discussed is rancid, and often we think of the smells of rancid butter or other fats, oils that have been left out and gone rancid, vegetable oil or anything like that. And the freshly mown hay or grass smell. It can be anywhere from a pleasant smell of grass and hay, or it could be an unpleasant smell. So the rancid odor, it depends on what is actually gone rancid. Meat, the smell of the actual Chinese character for the word rancid is meat that's gone rancid. And then the emotion. I want to spend a little time here talking about the emotion of anger in a little more depth, because anger is a big, wide range of emotion. It's convenient just to use the word anger, but really anger describes a wide range of emotions such as frustration, irritability, tension. And really, let's talk in depth about this, because I want you to understand that the element can be in balance in people who have a healthy wood, and the plan A to plan B, the being able to be flexible, is one aspect of a healthy wood. Another aspect of healthy wood, of how you would deal with frustration, is you would see someone being able to express it. Oh gosh, that's frustrating. That's a healthy response when your goal is no longer able to be met. Your expectations, your desires, your dreams of how you envision things, coming from the wood element, and then not being able to achieve it that way, being thwarted somehow, being stopped, just like the tree that gets covered over by another tree and has to find another way. That's the plan A to plan B. But in people, we can also deal with it in another way. When we're frustrated, we can reassess our plans, our goals. We can reassess and decide, well, how important is that really, that we do whatever our intention is to be? How important is it to do it the way that we're thinking of doing it? If our intention is to have a close connection with our family, and we are unable to fly on the airplane to go and meet them, but maybe we can have a Zoom call with them. So we create a different way of dealing with our planning. We have the same ultimate goal, but we find a new way to plan to get there. And that's going to then help us deal with our frustration, the frustration of not being able to see them in person. But yet, with video conferencing, we can find another way to relate to them that would be enjoyable and connecting. So that's an example of healthy anger, frustration. When you have somebody who's really out of balance with their wood element, on the extremes of the excess side, you can see that they're going to be very enraged. The voice will become a shouting sound. Their blood will rush to their face, and their face may even get really red with anger. There's going to be a green color at the temples, and their odor will become more predominantly rancid as they struggle, because a wood CF has this chronic struggle with that emotion of anger, and it can be something that they really don't want to enter into, or it could be something that they actually just blindly race into. They don't even seem to care to try to put the brakes on. And so their temper can rise tremendously and inappropriately. If we take the example of a person wanting to spend time with their family again and unable to fly, they may get very, very angry at the situation that they're in. They may get angry and frustrated with the airlines, or a whole number of other things that can happen. Oftentimes with anger, excessive anger, there's this sense of injustice, this sense of that things are not, they're not just disappointed, but they're being wronged. So there's a right versus wrong aspect to this as well. And they would become very righteous. They can take it out on whoever is around them, and they may not want to take it out on their nearest and dearest people, but often those people are the ones who bear the brunt of the person's storm, this wind of anger that blows through them like a hurricane. On the other hand, some people with anger and frustration don't go to the excess, they go to the deficiency. And the way that looks as an imbalance is a sense of resignation, a sense of futility, hopelessness, depression. So they may just give up on their goals. They don't come to a point like a healthy would way of dealing with it, where they say, okay, I can let that go and move on and still maintain their vibrancy. That's a healthy would way of dealing with frustration. They look so different. They look depressed. Their vitality is sapped out of them. The wood is just the anger in the wood element is described as the sap rising in the tree. Well, the sap makes the tree healthy and vital. The tree needs the sap to nourish it. So when that anger rises in a natural way, that frustration comes up and you find another way to deal with it, then there's still this great vitality. In fact, there may be even a greater vitality because they're dealing with their frustration in such a healthy way. It gives them strength, inner strength, and it can renew their purpose. There's this whole aspect of, in the springtime, of renewal, regeneration that's taking place in nature. And this takes place within us. And so it can charge up one's energy to deal with anger and frustration in a healthy way. But when the causative factor is in wood, you don't generally see this pattern. Very seldom do you see the pattern of the behavior going towards a healthy way of dealing with the wood, with the anger. It seems to go into either the excess rage side or the deficiency in terms of the depression and the stagnation of this energy. And the person loses their vitality when they're stagnant like that, and they become really not living up to their full potential anymore as a person. It's so important to be able to assist people at this deep level, and so we get to know our patients, we get to understand what's going on with them on a deep level, and so we can bring back the wood element into vitality, into balance, and the person can deal with their frustrations so differently and become revitalized and regenerated and renewed. The two organs here I've mentioned are the liver and the gallbladder. And I don't want to say too much more about the liver and gallbladder at this point, because I'm going to spend quite a bit of time in the next set of topics that we go on here. I'm going to be discussing the different functions of each of the meridians in terms of body, mind, and spirit. So I just want to say at this point that there is a function of the liver meridian and the gallbladder meridian to make physical effects on the person, and we can use points to do that. Acupuncture points can also be used on the liver and gallbladder meridian to help with planning and decision making functions that are more on a mental level. And then we have a spirit level. And that's where really the magic of Five Element Acupuncture is. As far as I'm concerned, the magic is to watch the person's spirit become renewed and their ability to become optimistic and hopeful come back when we treat points on the liver and the gallbladder meridian that go to the spirit of a person.